I want you all to see who my sister really is. Those were the last words I said before pressing play on the video that would destroy my sister's wedding. The lights dimmed and suddenly, instead of the romantic montage everyone expected, the giant screen displayed my sister's private text messages for all 200 guests to see. God, I can't believe Rachel actually thought she'd be standing up there with us. As if I want my wedding photos filled with her sensible pantsuits and that haircut. The gasps were immediate. The bride, my sister, screamed. Her new husband's face drained of color. And my mother, who had laughed when I was kicked out of the bridal party just days earlier, looked like she might faint. But I didn't flinch. I stood at the back of that beautiful converted barn overlooking Puget Sound, sipping champagne, watching years of manipulation and betrayal finally catch up to my sister, on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. My name is Rachel Thompson. I'm 34 years old, work in marketing in Seattle, and until recently, I believed that family meant something. That blood was thicker than water. That sisters had each other's backs. I was wrong, catastrophically wrong, and what happened at that wedding was just the culmination of a lifetime of being the responsible sister who finally snapped. Let me take you back to where it all began. Growing up in Lake Forest Park, Washington, I was always the sensible one. 2 years older than my sister Amber, I was expected to set the example, to be mature, to understand when my parents' attention was diverted to their clearly favorite child. Rachel, honey, can you help your sister with her science project? My dad would ask, despite the fact that I had my own homework to finish. Of course, I'd say because that's what good sisters do. When Amber got AC in biology during her sophomore year, my father hired a private tutor and scheduled a meeting with her teacher. Mr. Daniels clearly doesn't understand creative minds like Amber's, Dad explained at dinner. Some teachers just can't connect with exceptional students. A month later, when I brought home a B+ in the same class, his response was markedly different. B+. Have you considered studying harder? He asked, barely looking up from his phone. My mother was no better. When Amber dropped out of community college after just one semester to find herself, Mom defended her decision to the entire extended family. Amber is brave enough to follow her heart, she told our judgmental aunt at Thanksgiving. Not everyone needs a conventional path. Meanwhile, I was working full-time at a coffee shop to put myself through state university, maintaining a 3.8 GPA, and coming home on weekends to help with household chores. Rachel's always been practical, Mom would say with a shrug when people asked about me. I guess some people are just born knowing what they want. What I wanted was recognition. Appreciation. The same unconditional support my sister received simply for existing. But that wasn't our family dynamic. By the time we reached our 30s, the pattern was firmly established. I had built a solid career in digital marketing. I owned my small but stylish apartment in Capitol Hill. I paid my bills on time, maintained healthy friendships, and even managed to save for retirement. Amber, meanwhile, bounced between passion projects that never quite materialized into actual careers. There was the jewelry-making phase, the life coaching certification she never completed, and most recently, her attempts at becoming an Instagram influencer, which mostly consisted of posting filtered photos of Seattle coffee shops with inspirational quotes she found on Pinterest. Despite all this, I was still paying her cell phone bill, covering her car insurance, and occasionally throwing in for her rent when she was between gigs. Why? Because she was my sister. Because I kept hoping that one day, she'd grow up. Because every time I considered cutting her off, my parents would remind me that family supports family. Then came the engagement. I was at work when my phone exploded with notifications. Amber calling. Amber texting. Amber tagging me in an Instagram post. When I finally answered, she was screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. He proposed. Jeff proposed. I'm getting married. Jeff was a software developer at Amazon. Quiet, stable, with a good income, and a sensible outlook on life. In other words, a complete opposite of my sister. I'd met him a few times and genuinely liked him, though I couldn't understand what he saw in Amber beyond her undeniable physical beauty and charismatic personality. That's amazing, Amber. Congratulations. I said, genuinely happy for her. Maybe this was it, the milestone that would finally transform my sister into an adult. I need you to be my maid of honor, she declared. Not asked, declared. No one knows me like you do, Ratch. We're going to make this the most incredible wedding ever. Something warm bloomed in my chest. Recognition. Inclusion. The acknowledgement of our bond as sisters. For once, I wasn't just the backup plan or the safety net, I was essential. I'd be honored, I said, and I meant it. 2 days later, Amber called again. So I found the perfect venue, she gushed. It's this gorgeous converted barn on a cliff overlooking Puget Sound. But there's a tiny issue, they need the deposit by tomorrow to hold the date, and Jeff's bonus doesn't come through until next month. I knew what was coming. How much? I asked. Just $5,000, she said, as if it were pocket change. I swear I'm good for it, Ratch. You know I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I hesitated. $5,000 was a significant chunk of my savings. Please, she wheedled. It's my dream venue. And you're my maid of honor. Think of it as an early wedding gift. Okay, I agreed. But I'll need you to sign something saying you'll pay me back. She laughed. Oh my God, Rachel, always so formal. We're sisters. But fine, whatever makes you feel better. She never signed anything. And that $5,000 was just the beginning. Over the next 6 months, I became less of a maid of honor and more of a personal assistant, wedding planner and bank. I created spreadsheets tracking vendors and payments. I scheduled appointments. I designed her wedding website and digital invitations. I even mediated when she fought with the florist over including bird of paradise flowers in a Pacific Northwest wedding. They don't make sense climatically, the florist tried to explain. But they represent freedom and joy. Amber insisted, tears welling in her eyes. We'll make it work, I assured the florist, slipping her an extra $200 from my own pocket. The expenses kept mounting. The photographer required a 50% deposit. The caterer needed payment for tastings. The honeymoon suite had to be secured with a credit card. Just until Jeff's next bonus, Amber would say. We're a little overextended this month, she'd explain. You know I'm good for it, she'd promise. And every time, I'd sigh, pull out my credit card, and remind myself that this was temporary. That planning this wedding together was healing our relationship. That soon, I'd have my sister back, the one I'd imagined having all these years. I even bought the bridesmaid dress, a $300 navy blue monstrosity that Amber swore complemented everyone's skin tone, but made me look like I was attending a funeral at sea. It's perfect on you, she lied, while the bridal shop attendant avoided eye contact. For the bachelorette party, I rented a lakeside cabin in the Cascade Mountains. It cost 2 months' worth of savings, but Amber had been specific about wanting a nature retreat with luxury amenities. I planned activities, ordered custom decorations, and arranged for a private chef to prepare meals. The weekend arrived, and I welcomed Amber and her 5 bridesmaids, women I barely knew from her various failed career attempts, to the cabin I'd paid for. This is cute, Amber said, looking around with barely concealed disappointment. I thought it would be bigger, though. The listing said it sleeps 8 comfortably, I explained. There are 4 bedrooms. But where will we take the Instagram photos, she asked. The lighting in here is terrible. One of her bridesmaids, Kaylee, a blonde with an affected vocal fry, nodded in agreement. Totally. And is there, like, a hot tub? There is, I confirmed. On the back deck, overlooking the lake. Well, that's something at least, Amber sighed, as if I'd barely managed to meet minimum requirements. The weekend continued in much the same vein. Nothing was quite right. The chef's menu wasn't clean enough. The hiking trail I'd researched was too woodsy. The matching pajamas I'd ordered for everyone were basic. By Sunday, I was exhausted, both financially and emotionally. As we packed up to leave, I overheard Amber talking to Kaylee in the kitchen. I mean, she tried, Amber was saying. But this is nothing like the bachelorette Melissa had in Cabo last year. Remember those Cabana boys? They both giggled. At least she's covering most of the wedding costs, Kaylee replied. That's something, right? True. Rachel's always been good with money, if nothing else. I froze in the hallway, their words hitting me like physical blows. After everything I'd done, the planning, the money, the time, this was how my sister saw me. As nothing more than a convenient ATM with organizational skills. I wanted to confront her, to demand an apology, to ask how she could be so callous. But I didn't. Instead, I quietly finished packing, drove everyone back to Seattle, and dropped them off with forced smiles and hollow hugs. Thanks for everything, sis. Amber called as she wheeled her suitcase toward her apartment. Only 6 more weeks until the big day. 6 more weeks. I could make it 6 more weeks, I told myself. Then the wedding would be over, Amber would be Jeff's responsibility, and maybe, just maybe, our relationship could reset into something healthier. But fate had other plans. It was a Tuesday morning in April, just 4 days before the wedding. Seattle was doing that thing where it rained sideways while simultaneously being sunny. I was at my desk, working on a client presentation, when my phone lit up with Amber's face. Hey sis, I answered, already reaching for my wedding planning binder. What's up? Issue with the DJ. There was a pause, then a throat clear that I recognized as her preamble to bad news. So, Ratch, she started, her voice dripping with that false brightness she used when she was about to drop a bomb. I've been thinking about the wedding party, and I've decided to make some changes. My stomach tightened. What kind of changes? Well, Jeff and I want to keep things really intimate, you know. Like, really focused on our closest relationships. I frowned. Amber, I'm your sister. How much closer can you get? She laughed, that high, tinkling laugh that always preceded something cruel. That's just it, though. You're my sister. You'll always be my sister. But for the wedding party, we're thinking more along the lines of friends who really get us, you know. People who understand our journey. I sat very still, trying to process what she was saying. Are you taking me out of the wedding party? Not taking you out, she corrected quickly. More like, reassigning you. You've been so amazing with all the planning and financial stuff. You're basically our wedding MVP behind the scenes. MVP, I repeated, my voice flat. Exactly. You're like our wedding sponsor. The silent partner who makes it all happen. That's when I heard my mother's voice in the background. She must have been on speakerphone. Rachel, honey, don't make this a thing, Mom said, and I could hear the eye roll in her voice. Your sister wants her bridesmaids to be her besties. She didn't uninvite you, she just found a better role for you. They both laughed then, a synchronized mother-daughter chuckle that said, why are you being so difficult? I see, I said, my voice eerily calm even to my own ears. And who's replacing me? Kaylee. Amber exclaimed. You remember her from the bachelorette weekend? She and I have just gotten so close lately. She really understands my aesthetic vision. Your aesthetic vision, I repeated. Exactly. And don't worry about the dress, Kaylee can use the one you bought. You're about the same size, right? Maybe she's a bit slimmer, but nothing a good tailor can't fix. I looked down at the wedding binder on my desk. At the spreadsheet tracking the $21,000 I'd spent so far. At the to-do list with 3 more vendor payments scheduled for that week. So just to be clear, I said slowly, I'm no longer the maid of honor, but you still want me to handle all the payments and planning. Well, yeah, Amber said, as if it were obvious. That's what you're good at, Ratch. The behind-the-scenes stuff. Leave the spotlight to people who know what to do with it. My mother chimed in again. Honestly, Rachel, this is for the best. You know how you get in front of crowds, all stiff and awkward. This way you can still contribute without having to worry about speeches or walking down the aisle. It's a win-win. They were still talking, making plans for my replacement, discussing how to announce the change, when something inside me went very, very quiet. Like the silence after an avalanche when everything is buried and still. I have to go, I said, cutting them off mid-sentence. Client meeting. I hung up before they could respond. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at my computer screen, where I had the wedding website open, the one I'd built from scratch, with a custom domain I was paying for, featuring photos I had taken and edited myself. Then, slowly, I opened a new browser tab and logged into my email. I navigated to a folder labeled Amber's Wedding, and began scrolling through months of correspondence. Vendor contracts. Payment receipts. Planning discussions. And something else, something I hadn't paid much attention to before, the raw footage and files for the wedding video presentation I'd been creating. Hours of unedited video from planning sessions. Screenshots of text conversations Amber had sent me for reference. Voice memos she'd left when she was too busy to call. All the unfiltered, unvarnished truth about who my sister really was, stored neatly in my digital archives. A plan began to form. I thought about all the checks I'd written. The venue. The photographer. The deposit on the honeymoon suite. All in my name because Amber's credit was having a temporary situation. I thought about the bachelorette party I'd planned, the registry I'd helped curate, the hours I'd spent on the phone with vendors who now knew me by name. And then I thought about something else, the wedding hashtag I'd created, the Instagram account I'd set up to document the journey, and the private digital album where all the planning photos, videos, and messages were stored. All under my login. All accessible with my password. All easily editable. I opened the video project I'd been working on for weeks, a heartwarming montage of Amber and Jeff's love story set to music, followed by a special thank you message to guests. I'd spent hours gathering photos, editing clips, timing transitions to match the beat of their first dance song. I'd even recorded Amber's tearful message of gratitude to her parents, Jeff's family, and her amazing friends who have been there every step of the way. Notice who was missing from that list of thank yous. Yeah, me too. I created a copy of the project and began to work. I replaced the romantic opening with screenshots of text conversations, ones Amber had sent me herself when asking for opinions on wedding details. Conversations where she mocked bridesmaids' dress choices, criticized Jeff's family, and admitted she was only inviting certain relatives because they give the best gifts. I added clips from planning meetings, raw footage I'd shot to reference later. Amber rolling her eyes when the wedding planner stepped away. Amber criticizing the venue manager's outfit. Amber whispering to Kaylee about how tragic her cousin's engagement ring was compared to hers. The final touch was a voice memo she'd sent me just a month earlier. Ratch, can you front the payment for the honeymoon suite? I'm tapped out this month. I promise I'll pay you back, but you know how it is, some of us have expensive taste. Laughs seriously though, it's just temporary. You can watch our Instagram stories from your apartment and pretend you're there. As the last clip faded in my new version, I added a simple spreadsheet. Every payment I'd made. Every bill I'd covered. Every loan that had never been repaid. The total, highlighted in bright yellow at the bottom, was just over $21,000. Then, in simple white text, I added a final message. Congratulations, Amber and Jeff. Consider this my wedding gift. The truth, fully paid for. I exported the video and saved it to a flash drive. Then I closed my laptop, went home, and slept better than I had in months. The next few days passed in a blur. I didn't attend the rehearsal dinner on Friday night. I wasn't invited. Instead, I stayed home, reviewed my handiwork one last time, and prepared myself for what would come next. On Saturday morning, I dressed carefully in a simple black dress, not one of the 5 potential bridesmaid options Amber had made me buy and then decided against. I did my makeup, fixed my hair, and drove to the venue with the flash drive in my purse. The ceremony was beautiful, I'll give them that. The weather cooperated, providing a rare perfect Seattle day with blue skies, and just enough breeze to make the flower arrangements dance. Amber looked stunning in her custom gown, that I had helped pay for. Jeff looked like he might pass out from happiness or heatstroke, it was hard to tell which. I sat in the back row, next to distant relatives who barely recognized me. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to this union, I remained silent. My objection would come later, and it wouldn't be to the marriage, it would be to the years of exploitation that had preceded it. After the ceremony, guests moved to the reception area for cocktails and appetizers. I stayed in the background, nursing a glass of champagne, watching as Amber worked the room like a politician at a fundraiser. My mother spotted me once and gave me a quick wave before turning back to her conversation with Jeff's mom. My father didn't see me at all, too busy playing proud papa to notice his other daughter standing alone by the gift table. I waited until the perfect moment, when the DJ announced dinner was about to be served. Then I approached him casually. "Hi, I'm Rachel, the bride's sister," I said with a smile. "I have the video presentation for after dinner." There was a last-minute update. The DJ, a bearded guy in his 30s who'd been dealing with Amber's changing music requests for months, just nodded wearily. "Sure thing. Same slot in the program?" "Exactly the same," I confirmed, handing him the flash drive. "Everything's ready to go, just press play when it's time." He took it without question. Why would he doubt me? I was the responsible one, the organized sister who had been handling all the details for months. Dinner was served. Toasts were made. My father cried while talking about his beautiful baby girl, and how proud he was of the woman she'd become. My mother gushed about what a perfect couple Amber and Jeff were. Kaylee, in my navy blue dress that had indeed been tailored to fit her slimmer frame, gave a maid of honor speech about how Amber was literally the most authentic person she knew. I ate my salmon, drank my wine, and waited. Finally, the DJ's voice came over the speakers. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the screen for a special presentation celebrating Amber and Jeff's journey together." The lights dimmed. The projector hummed to life. The screen at the front of the room glowed white, then faded to the first image. This was the moment I'd opened with, the moment when everything changed. The moment when 200 wedding guests saw the real Amber Thompson, unfiltered and unedited. "I want you all to see who my sister really is," I whispered to myself as the first text message appeared on screen. The room went silent. Then came the gasps. The murmurs. The uncomfortable shifting in seats. On screen, Amber's conversation with Kaylee continued. "God, I can't believe Rachel actually thought she'd be standing up there with us. As if I want my wedding photos filled with her sensible pantsuits and that haircut." Kaylee's response appeared, "LOL, right. At least she's good for covering the bills." I watched Amber's face transform from confusion to horror to rage. She jumped up from her seat at the head table, screaming, "Turn it off. Turn it off." But the DJ, hidden in his booth, couldn't hear her over the audio now playing, Amber's own voice criticizing the bridesmaids' body types, and wondering aloud if Jeff's mother would dress like a Midwestern soccer mom for the wedding. Jeff sat frozen, his expression unreadable as he watched his new wife exposed message by message, clip by clip. My parents were in motion now, my father trying to reach the projector, my mother rushing toward me, her face contorted with fury. "What have you done?" she hissed when she reached me. I looked her directly in the eyes. "I gave her exactly what she deserves. She's your sister." "No," I said calmly. "She's your daughter. There's a difference." By now, the video had reached the financial spreadsheet. Gasps echoed through the room as the total figure, $21,000, appeared in bright yellow. "You've ruined everything," my mother said, tears streaming down her face. I stood up, gathering my purse. "No, Mom. You did that years ago when you taught Amber she could take whatever she wanted without consequences." I walked past her, through the crowd of stunned guests, and out the side door into the cool evening air. Behind me, I could hear Amber's screams, Jeff's raised voice asking questions, the general chaos of a wedding reception imploding. But I didn't look back. I got into my car, drove home, and poured myself a glass of wine. Then I sat on my balcony, looking out at the Seattle skyline, and felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. My phone was already exploding with notifications. Texts from relatives. Calls from my parents. A series of increasingly hysterical voicemails from Amber. I turned it off and set it aside. Tomorrow would bring consequences. There would be anger, accusations, perhaps even legal threats. But tonight, for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't responsible for fixing anyone else's problems. Tonight, I was free. Part 2, 3,000 words. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. By Sunday morning, my phone had 47 missed calls, 103 text messages, and countless social media notifications. I scrolled through them while sipping my coffee, feeling strangely detached from the hurricane I'd unleashed. From Amber, "How could you do this to me? My life is ruined." From Mom, "Call us immediately. We need to fix this disaster you've created." From Dad, "Your behavior was inexcusable. Your mother is devastated." From Jeff, "We need to talk. Alone." That last one surprised me. I hadn't expected to hear from Jeff at all, assuming he'd be too busy dealing with the fallout or possibly even annulling the marriage. I hesitated, then texted back, "Coffee tomorrow. 10 a.m. at Analog on Capitol Hill." His response came immediately, "I'll be there." The rest of Sunday passed in a strange calm. I cleaned my apartment, did laundry, and prepared for the work week ahead as if I hadn't just detonated a nuclear bomb in my family. Several times, my mother's name appeared on my phone screen, but I let each call go to voicemail. I wasn't ready for that conversation yet. Monday morning, I arrived at Analog Coffee 15 minutes early. The familiar scent of freshly ground beans and the quiet hum of morning conversations felt surreal after the chaos of Saturday night. I ordered a pour-over and claimed a small table by the window, watching the door. Jeff arrived precisely at 10, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually neat hair was disheveled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He spotted me immediately and approached, his expression unreadable. "Rachel," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. "Jeff," I replied. "Coffee?" He shook his head. "I've had enough caffeine to kill a horse. Haven't really slept since, well, you know." I nodded. "The wedding. If you can call it that." He rubbed his face with both hands. "More like a public execution." "I'm not going to apologize," I said quietly. "I'm not asking you to." He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "What I want to know is, was it all true? Everything in that video?" I held his gaze. "Every word. Every text. Every dollar amount." He exhaled slowly. "That's what I thought. Some part of me knew, you know. There were signs. Comments she'd make. The way she'd talk about you when you weren't around. And yet you married her anyway, I pointed out. For about 6 hours. A bitter smile crossed his face. We're getting it annulled. My lawyer filed the paperwork this morning. I wasn't surprised, but hearing it confirmed still sent a jolt through me. That was fast. When you realize you've married someone you don't actually know, someone capable of that level of exploitation. Cruelty. It doesn't seem wise to drag things out. He leaned forward. The thing is, Rachel, I liked you. I respected you. I thought you were the sensible counterbalance to Amber's. Amberness. I never realized how badly she was treating you. Would it have mattered if you had? I asked, genuinely curious. He considered this for a moment. I want to say yes. I want to believe I would have stood up for you, confronted her, something. But honestly, I don't know. I was in love with her, or who I thought she was. Love makes us stupid, I offered. Apparently. He almost smiled. For what it's worth, I think what you did was justified. Extreme, but justified. And I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening sooner. Thank you, I said, surprised by how much his validation meant. What will you do now? Move on. Focus on work. Maybe take that transfer to the Austin office I've been considering. He stood up. I should go. I have a meeting with the lawyer in an hour. I nodded. Good luck, Jeff. You too, Rachel. He hesitated. They're going to come after you, you know. Amber and your parents. They're already talking about legal action for emotional distress, public humiliation, all that. Let them try, I said calmly. I have receipts. Literally and figuratively. He actually laughed at that. Yes, you do. Take care of yourself. After Jeff left, I sat for a while longer, watching Seattle life continue around me. People rushing to work, couples holding hands, baristas crafting elaborate latte art, all of them unaware that my world had just been completely reconfigured. I was still sitting there when my phone rang again. My mother. This time, I answered. Hello, Mom. Rachel Elizabeth Thompson. Her voice was ice cold. I've been calling you for 2 days. I know. I needed time to think. To think. After what you did. Do you have any idea of the damage you've caused? Your sister is absolutely destroyed. The wedding she's been planning for months, ruined. Her relationship with Jeff, over. Her reputation among our friends and family, shattered. And whose fault is that, really? I asked quietly. Yours, she exploded. You and your jealousy and your vindictiveness. How could you do this to your own sister? The same way she's been doing it to me for years, I replied, keeping my voice steady. The same way you've been enabling her. What are you talking about? $21,000, Mom. That's how much I spent on Amber's wedding. Money I'll never see again. Money she took while mocking me behind my back. While you laughed along with her. That's what this is about. Money? She sounded disgusted. We would have helped you if you'd said something. It was never about the money, I said. It was about respect. Recognition. Being treated like a person instead of an ATM with organizational skills. Well, I hope you're satisfied, she snapped. Your sister needs you now more than ever, and instead of supporting her through this crisis, you're the one who caused it. I almost laughed. Are you serious? After everything that happened, you're still expecting me to come running to Amber's rescue? She's your sister. And I'm your daughter, I countered. But that never seemed to matter much, did it? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When my mother spoke again, her voice was different, quieter, but somehow more dangerous. Amber is meeting with a lawyer tomorrow. She's planning to sue you for emotional distress and sabotage. The venue is considering legal action as well, for disruption of service. You've made a very serious mistake, Rachel. No, Mom. My mistake was letting this go on for so long. I took a deep breath. Tell Amber and her lawyer that if they want to pursue this, I'll be happy to submit all my evidence to the court, including the contracts in my name, the payment records, and the complete, unedited video footage I didn't include in the wedding presentation. I'm sure a judge would be very interested in seeing it all. You wouldn't dare. I already did, I reminded her. On Saturday night, in front of 200 people. Another silence, this one longer and heavier. Your father and I are very disappointed in you, she finally said. I've been disappointed in you for most of my life, I replied. I guess that makes us even. I ended the call before she could respond, set my phone down, and realized my hands were shaking. Not from fear or regret, but from the strange, powerful feeling of finally standing up for myself after decades of acquiescence. 3 weeks later, I received a certified letter from a lawyer, formally threatening legal action for emotional distress and sabotage. I responded with my own letter, a detailed accounting of every penny spent, every contract signed in my name, and every verbal agreement broken. I included a USB drive with selected clips that hadn't made it into the wedding video, along with a note saying there was plenty more where that came from. They never pursued it further. My parents didn't speak to me for months. When they finally did call, it was because Amber had moved back home after Jeff finalized the annulment, and they wanted to know if I would help her get back on her feet. She's struggling, Rachel, my father said, his voice heavy with implied guilt. She's lost everything, her husband, her friends, her confidence. She needs her big sister right now. No, I said simply. No? Just like that? He sounded genuinely shocked. After all these years, you're just going to abandon your sister when she needs you most. Dad, where were you when I needed someone? When I was working 2 jobs to put myself through college. When I was spending my savings on Amber's wedding. When she kicked me out of her bridal party and you said nothing. That's different, he protested. You've always been the strong one. The independent one. And whose fault is that? I asked. You and Mom made me that way because you gave everything to Amber and nothing to me. I had to be strong and independent because I had no choice. That's not fair, Rachel. None of this has been fair, Dad. But it ends now. I'm done being Amber's safety net. I'm done being the family ATM. I'm done being the responsible one who gets taken for granted. So that's it. You're just cutting us off. I sighed, suddenly tired of the conversation, of the circular logic that had defined my family relationships for decades. I'm not cutting anyone off. I'm establishing boundaries. If Amber wants to apologize, really apologize, not just because she needs something from me, I'll listen. If you and Mom want to acknowledge your part in all this and work on building a healthier relationship, I'm open to that. But I won't go back to the way things were. I don't recognize you anymore, my father said quietly. That's the problem, Dad. You never really saw me in the first place. After I hung up, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the Seattle skyline in shades of pink and gold. I thought about family, what it should be versus what mine had been. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I thought about the money, the time, the emotional energy I'd invested in people who had never valued me. And I felt lighter. As if I'd set down a burden I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten it wasn't actually part of me. In the months that followed, I made changes. I left my marketing job and started my own event planning business, specializing in corporate events where clients sign actual contracts and pay real invoices. I moved to a different neighborhood, a small but vibrant apartment in Fremont with a view of the canal. I made new friends, genuine ones who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. I heard things about Amber occasionally through mutual acquaintances. She was dating again, a bartender from Belltown, who didn't know about her wedding disaster. She was trying to rebrand herself as a relationship coach on social media, offering advice on authentic connections and recognizing toxic patterns. She still lived with our parents. My mother sent a birthday card in July, the first communication since our phone call. Inside was a gift card to a department store and a note that said simply, "We miss you." No apology. No acknowledgement. Just 3 words that managed to be both genuine and manipulative at the same time. I didn't respond. By Christmas, the silence had become comfortable. I spent the holiday with friends, hosting a small dinner party in my new apartment. We exchanged thoughtful gifts, shared stories, and laughed until midnight. Not once did I check my phone to see if my family had called. They hadn't. On New Year's Eve, as I stood on a friend's rooftop watching fireworks explode over the Space Needle, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Amber. "Happy New Year, Ratch. I hope we can talk sometime. I miss you." I stared at the message for a long time, feeling the weight of history and hurt and possibility. Then I put my phone away without responding. Not because I wasn't open to reconciliation someday, but because I wasn't ready yet. Because healing happens on the timeline of the wounded. And I was still healing. Spring came, bringing cherry blossoms and rain showers and a sense of renewal. My business was thriving, I'd hired 2 assistants, and was booking events 6 months in advance. I'd started dating again, cautiously but optimistically. I'd even begun volunteering at a mentorship program for young women, sharing lessons about self-worth and boundaries that I wished someone had taught me decades earlier. One sunny April afternoon, almost exactly a year after the wedding disaster, I was leaving a client meeting downtown when I literally bumped into Jeff on the sidewalk. "Rachel," he exclaimed, steadying me with a hand on my arm. "I thought you'd left Seattle." I smiled, genuinely pleased to see him. "Nope, still here. Just in a different neighborhood." "How are you? How's Austin?" "I never went," he admitted. "Got promoted instead, decided to stay." "I'm good, actually. Really good." He hesitated. "Have you heard from Amber?" "A text at New Year's." "Nothing since." He nodded. "She contacted me a few months ago. Wanted to clear the air and find closure." "And did you?" "No," he said simply. "Some chapters are better left closed." "Speaking of which, how's your family situation?" "Non-existent, mostly," I replied. "And that's okay. I've built a life I love without them." "I can see that," he said, studying my face. "You look happy, Rachel." "Peaceful." "I am," I realized, somewhat surprised by the truth of it. "I really am." We parted ways with promises to get coffee sometime, promises we both knew we probably wouldn't keep. Our connection had been circumstantial, defined by Amber, and without her, we had little in common beyond a shared experience we'd both rather forget. As I walked back to my car, I thought about the journey of the past year. The wedding video that had changed everything. The family I'd lost. The self-respect I'd gained. The boundaries I'd finally established after decades of being boundaryless. Here's what I learned from all this: sometimes the strongest family ties are the ones you break. Sometimes the most important boundaries are the ones that cost you relationships. And sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else, it's about freeing yourself. Today, I live in a different part of Seattle. I've started my own event planning business, specializing in corporate events where clients sign actual contracts and pay real invoices. I have friends who value me, a savings account that belongs only to me, and a life that doesn't revolve around managing someone else's chaos. As for Amber, I hear things occasionally through mutual acquaintances. She's dating again. She's trying to rebrand herself as a relationship coach on social media. She still lives with our parents. I don't miss any of them. That probably makes me sound cold, but here's the truth: some families aren't worth saving. Some relationships drain more than they give. And some bridges, once burned, light the way to a better path. So was what I did cruel? Maybe. Calculated? Definitely. But necessary? Absolutely. Because in the end, the greatest gift I gave myself wasn't revenge. It was release. Sometimes people ask me if I regret what I did, if I wish I'd handled things differently, more privately, less dramatically. I always give them the same answer: I regret that it took me so long to stand up for myself. I regret the years I spent trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I regret believing that family meant unconditional support when, in my case, it actually meant unconditional exploitation. But the wedding video, the public exposure, the dramatic exit. No, I don't regret that at all. Because sometimes the only way to break a lifetime of patterns is to shatter them so completely they can never be reassembled. Sometimes the only way to be heard is to speak so loudly that no one can pretend not to listen. And sometimes the only way to find peace is to walk away from the people who have always disturbed it. If you're watching this and something in my story resonates with you, if you recognize yourself in my decades of people-pleasing, in my desperate attempts to earn approval, in my willingness to give and give and give without receiving, then hear me now: you deserve better. You deserve reciprocity. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not what you can provide. And if getting that means burning a few bridges, well, sometimes the view of the sunset is better with nothing blocking the horizon. This is Rachel Thompson, signing off. Thanks for listening to my story. If it meant something to you, please like, share, and subscribe. And remember, family isn't just about blood. It's about respect. It's about reciprocity. It's about love that doesn't come with conditions or calculations. And sometimes, it's about the family you choose rather than the one you were born into.